Ever tried to save a few bucks on a keyboard or a set of monitors, only to end up with a thin-tone sound and a handful of features that never quite work the way you imagined? I've been there, and the frustration usually shows up the first time you try to record a simple chord progression or run a live set. That's why I wanted to see if Yamaha's 76-key Genos 2 production station paired with the GNS-MS-01 3-piece speaker system actually feels like a smarter buy rather than a budget gamble. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I spent a solid weekend unpacking the unit, wiring it to the speakers, and running it through a typical home studio workflow, from layering synth pads to pulling out the built-in arranger tracks for a quick jam. The first thing I noticed was how the Genos 2 doesn't try to be a generic piano. It's built around a workflow that expects you to compose, arrange, and even mix without reaching for a separate DAW. That's a big deal for anyone who's tried to cobble together a setup from a low-cost 61-key controller and a pair of computer monitors, only to spend hours chasing latency, mismatched I/O, and a sound that feels more demo than professional. Who should consider this bundle? If you're a composer who likes to sketch ideas quickly, a gigging keyboardist who needs on-stage monitoring, or a teacher who wants a reliable all-in-one workstation for students, the Genos 2 plus the GNS-MS-01 speakers hit a sweet spot. The 76 keys give you enough range to play piano parts without the cramped feel of a 61 keyboard, and the semi-weighted action is forgiving enough for a player who isn't a concert pianist but still wants that responsive feel. The speaker system, with its 3-piece design, is tuned to complement the Genos' output, so you're not left fighting a thin mids range that often plagues cheap desktop monitors. On the flip side, if you're a studio engineer who already owns a full-size mixing console, high-end studio monitors, and a dedicated rack of effects, you'll probably find the Genos 2's internal processing a bit limiting. The speakers are designed for near-field use. They'll fill a small rehearsal room nicely, but they won't replace a proper monitoring setup in a treated acoustic space. Also, the bundle leans heavily on the Yamaha ecosystem. You can't just swap in a third-party sound module without a bit of extra routing, which could be a deal-breaker for someone who already has a favorite VST library they don't want to abandon. Let's talk practicality. The first thing I tested was the arranger function. I threw a basic chord progression into the built-in style library and let the Genos 2 generate a full backing track in real time. It was impressively tight, the tempo stayed locked, the drum patterns didn't wobble, and the harmonic changes followed my input without lag. For a home songwriter, that means you can lay down a full arrangement in minutes rather than spending half an hour sequencing each instrument. The built-in effects, like the reverb and chorus, are decent enough for practice and rough demos, but if you need a high-end studio sound, you'll still want to send the output to a DAW for further processing. The speaker system's real test came when I tried to use it for a small live demo. The 3-way configuration, 2 satellite speakers with a central subwoofer, gave a balanced spread across the room. Bass notes from the lower octaves of the Genos 2 didn't disappear into the floor, and the mids stayed clear enough for a vocal line to cut through. What surprised me was the level of control Yamaha offers through the speaker's own EQ knobs. A quick tweak of the low-mid shelf helped tame a resonant frequency that some rooms tend to emphasize, and the result was a more natural sound without resorting to external equalizers. However, there are hidden trade-offs. The GNS-MS-01 system uses a proprietary connection method that looks tidy but can be a pain if you ever need to replace a single driver. The cables are snugly fitted, and while Yamaha markets it as Quick Connect, you'll often need a small screwdriver to free the connectors without damaging them. In a real-world gig scenario where you're swapping gear between gigs, that extra step could be annoying. Also, the speakers don't have a built-in Bluetooth or wireless streaming option, so you're stuck with a wired setup. Not a problem for a fixed studio, but something to keep in mind if you want a clean stage look. Another practical point is power consumption. The Genos 2 draws a respectable amount of current, and the speaker system adds its own load. I ran the whole rig off a single 150-watt surge protector for a 2-hour rehearsal, and the power draw stayed within safe limits, but it's something to watch if you're planning to power the whole thing from a limited outlet, especially in older venues. The heat output was modest. The Genos 2's ventilation grill stayed warm but never reached uncomfortable levels, and the speakers didn't emit any noticeable humming when left on standby.